Okay, we're live.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. It is Monday, June 6, 2022, just past 1:30 p.m. And this is a special ARPA workshop being conducted by the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners. All three commissioners are present. That constitutes a quorum. Do we have opening comments from any of our commissioners?
No opening comments.
Then let's turn it over to Tim Johnson, our county administrator, who's going to, I believe, walk us through the proposals.
Thank you, commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to do that today. Casey, if you could go to the first slide, I'd be much obliged.
Okay.
I'd like to just, for the purposes of the record, remind everybody why we're here. As a part of the pandemic, COVID-19, federal government passed 4 different portions of federal legislation. One was the CARES Act, which you've already received and spent. Stay with that PowerPoint, if you will, Casey. And within that regard, the next movement was the ARPA, which was $1 trillion of money allocated by Congress. And within the context of that was a component of the 11 chapters or 11 titles. Within Title 9, it identified categories associated with those that you see on the screen. Next slide, please. So within that, you can see that what is called the Local Fiscal Recovery Fund is a unusual circumstance which provided cities and counties across the nation, some 19,000 in total, with financial assistance to support them due to the hardship constituted by the pandemic. Lincoln County received $9.2 million roughly. Next slide, please. As you went through this process, you asked, you're taking on what appears to be a 2-phase process. First one is you asked internally of your departments and offices to submit requests to you on how to use these monies. This is what we're here for today. And as you'll soon see, as of the date, you've approved and allocated $347,000 for testing, vaccination supplies. Also, within the context of that, you had to downsize one position and it was returned to full employment as allowed on using ARPA, LF, RF dollars. So for total, you have today 37 different requests, just shy of just a little over $5 million. You have a chart in front of you that lists all of these. We'll go through them individually. As for the purposes of the federal audit, which will occur late 2025, 2026. I've already done this with my previous employer, city I was with. So I provided you a chart. It's just a basic chart that you can evaluate each one of these, although honestly, you could adopt, approve all of the requests here today and still have over $4 million to provide program in the community and in the county. Excellent opportunities there. But this would provide you an opportunity some years from now that when the auditors from the federal government do show up, it identifies you went through this exercise, reviewed these, and have a documentation that can be shared with the auditors. And it's a pretty simple component. It talks about eligibility. Is it county specific, meaning internal, to help our customer service programming? And does it have a countywide focus? Does it have a regional focus? Is it leveraged by other dollars? As it pertains to service, what is the number of potential customers that this would support? Is it sustainable after the grant? And is there any other alternative funding that needs to be examined as it pertains to making this a successful endeavor? I just provided a simple 1 through 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, and it's just arbitrarily up to you. Again, and then we can add these up at the end and see how they work. But again, you have plentiful money still left over in this activity in order to pursue that. Next slide, please. So again, next slide, if we will. I think there's a couple things in there that I would like to talk about. And it's a real testament to the department heads and such. We see a leverage of almost $10 million out of the amount of $5 million. So that is a tremendous effort on behalf of your department heads. Real thanks to them for that effort. It goes a long way. And most of those, of course, are in 2 to 3 projects, but nonetheless, that leverage element is there. This is, again, the review, evaluation, and scoring process. Next slide, please. So I'll stop there for a moment. And if you have any questions, ask them right now. But we've divided these out into the 7 categories that the federal government has identified allocations that can be made. And those are public health, negative economic impacts, service to disproportionately impacted communities, premium pay for essential workers, infrastructure, revenue replacement, grant administration. And as we were going through this, failure on my part, and my apologies to the 3 of you, we had 3 applications that required and are still requiring further analysis. I'll get to those as we come across them. I have answers on 2 out of the 3, with a 3rd still pending overall insight and direction from the management team. And then there was 1 that has been pulled under public health. It is the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Assessment. And I have been informed by our director at HHS that they have found another source of revenue or funding for that activity. Any questions, commissioners?
Not so far from me.
Let's
Okay.
do it.
Let's go
Yeah.
for it. Okay. So the first one relates to the residential outpatient treatment center remodel.
And I believe Jane has already presented to us.
Yes,
on
Jane
this
has,
previously.
Jane Romero, our HHS director, has presented to you in a BOC meeting this process. So I think you've heard it significant, and unless you have any questions, I ask for you to consider that and move forward.
So format wise, do you want like a yes, no from us?
That would be
as we go along in
helpful as
each
we go
project?
along. And if you could, while we're having discussions, you want to put your numbers in across each one of those, that would be much appreciated.
I don't think we're adopting. That was my
Not
understanding. We're
adopting
So
yet,
just a
but-
consensus, maybe? Is that what you're
That'll
looking
work.
for?
Sure.
Okay.
Right, because I understand we'll have these,
In a staff report before you, not this coming week, but the following week at the BOC.
so we can have discussion at the BOC and then action the following week.
Absolutely.
All right.
Again, equity, diversity, inclusion assessment has been pulled. We'll go to the next one. The health clinic remodel. Again, this is a Health and Human Services request for $250,000. Any questions? I defer to you, Chair.
Any questions from my fellow commissioners? Again, this is another project that Jane introduced to us in her earlier presentation. So looks like if there are no questions, we can move on to.
I do have a question. And taking a stab at filling out the scoring sheet here, sheet, the last category, I'm going to give away my numbers here, is the alternative funding. So if 1 is lowest and 5 highest, am I saying there's opportunity for alternative funding and that's a 5? Like, walk me through what you mean by that category.
Yeah, so if there was alternative funding associated with it, and that would be identified in the applications that each one of the department directors submitted to you. And if they didn't identify that and didn't show it in a leverage process, there wasn't one.
So that's different than leveraged monies by percent?
That's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
For example, could community development block grant or economic development administration or something along those lines picked up the tab?
I'm with you. Thanks.
Wellness program.
This program comes from Human Resources. Significant element to be able to help our employees on a whole host of efforts on nutrition, exercise, health screening, risk assessments, weight loss, smoking cessation, stress reduction, which we all could use. So personally, I'm hoping that you support this one. I could use that.
I don't know. Do I need to declare a conflict of interest here with the stress? Yeah.
We're all potential users.
Yeah.
No, this is great. And we do have David Collier here in the room if we have any questions for him about this proposal. Say it looks like a smart use of the funds myself.
Well, I think this is also reflective of the change in how healthcare is being delivered, and certainly the director of HHS could correct me. Feel free to do so. But certainly in recent years, the emphasis of healthcare has gone to wellness or prevention versus treatment, which in the long run doesn't necessarily change behavior or the outcome.
Okay. So do we have consensus on this one? Sure. Okay, let's move. Let's see. Diversity audit.
So this comes from our juvenile department, community justice. It's known as Project Ally. But excuse me, in order for me to get my head wrapped around it, I identified it as the diversity audit that's typically referred to in their document under project description and proposed use of funds. The total cost on this is $15,000.
I think Director Camp, oh, there he is.
Yes,
He's
he's
here.
here.
If we have questions, but my understanding is this is specifically looking at the basically the juvenile center or youth ties, as we now call it, and trying to do what we can there to make that kind of more LGBTQ affirming and friendly.
And I think the need jumps out when you cite the data that is included in Director Camp's proposal. 25 to 40% of youth who become homeless are part of the LGBTQ community. You know, there are too many cases I've known about, heard about, where a teen comes out and they are kicked out by the family or they flee, choosing not to come out because they're pretty certain that this will be the result, that they're essentially doing it for their own safety and well-being, which is tragic. So very happy to see this.
So I do have
Yeah, go ahead,
a question, if I can talk.
Commissioner.
And not to pick on Director Kempa, but I do notice that the project categories include staffing, and I thought that we had concerns about sustainability when it came to staffing. In there-
In those funds, I don't believe we're asking for any staffing per se. It's just more for training of the staff that we currently have to ensure that we're meeting all of that criteria and to identify that.
And I think part of this was hiring a consultant or someone to do the audit. So maybe that's where the staffing part got
Yeah,
confused.
that's for an
was
audit and for training and, yeah, inclusive.
But all that's limited duration.
Correct.
No ongoing.
It's a one-time.
positions. Mhm.
Well, assuming you do the audit and implement the things, you wouldn't need sustainability because you did the training and implemented the findings.
Yeah, they're
So,
one time.
Sounds good to me. Do we have a consensus on this one?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
You should just stay there, Tony. The next one's
Yeah,
yours
'cause
too,
the
I
next
believe.
one's
Yeah.
yours too. The New Horizons Shelter Project.
So in the context of this, in a lovely program, public health has a direct impact. And it has an overarching positive impact for the whole county. And I'll turn to our director to answer any of your questions or provide any further input.
So for anybody who's watching who isn't familiar with the proposal, essentially, Tony, I understand this is to help fund remodeling the existing juvenile detention space for shelter, and then for offices, right? And then the current office space would become shelter, and you'd be able to serve clients over the age of 18, which, correct?
Correctly, 18 to 25.
Yeah, which I think is a fantastic thing. There are so many misconceptions and myths about homelessness, and one of the things that is often overlooked as a major cause of homelessness is aging out of the foster care system. I mean, I know a lot of fantastic foster parents who
Thanks,
consider that, their foster child family for life. But I've also heard of too many cases where the child reaches the age of 18 and they basically say, okay, you're on your own now. Good luck. Send a postcard sometime. So I think giving us the capacity to offer this kind of shelter is a fantastic idea.
I agree. One thing I was just going to point out is on the actual funding request page, it says that, Tony, that you've applied for funding for staffing for the expansion. But then just a note that on this document here, there's no note about that money being leveraged, and it would be leveraged because you have the grant coming in for the staffing. So just to note that there is some leveraged funds there.
Correct.
Yep.
All right, have we got consensus? Any further? No, go ahead, Doug.
Question.
Please,
First of all,
Commissioner.
RHY, Transitional Homeless Program, RHY,
Runaway and homeless youth.
Yes, that's runaway and homeless youth. Yeah.
okay.
RHWA Transitional Homeless Program, that's a state program or federal?
Yeah, it's a federal.
Okay.
Again, and just to clarify, when it says these funds cannot be used for the cost of the building or improvements, you're talking about the funds from the RHY Transitional Program, not the ARPA funds.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah, so ARPA pays for the physical remodel and then RHI pays for the staffing.
Correct.
Excellent.
Okay.
It's a very creative model. It's an excellent creative model.
And Tony, do you have, has that staffing funding been
We still,
approved yet, or you're still waiting? Or
still waiting.
Okay.
Still waiting. We anticipate on it getting approved. If not, there's another opportunity for that same grant coming up.
Okay.
Consensus on this one?
Yep.
Okay, let's move to negative economic impacts. I have a feeling we may be calling you back again, Tony, but you get a little break right now. And by negative economic impacts, Mr. Johnson, I assume that means to ameliorate negative impacts, not to cause further negative
Yeah,
impacts.
that's correct. Absolutely. But remember, that's federal terminology,
Yes.
not Lincoln County terminology. So within the context of that, there are several things in which to look at. One, as it pertains to the general overall economy, and two, as it may pertain to a targeted population, or three, both. In the first one, we have climate action and vulnerability plan. This proposal seeks to take a green approach to our recovery efforts due to COVID and the pandemic. And by doing so, develop a comprehensive climate action plan and climate vulnerability study. From this, will be a development of tools in our efforts to better understand, reduce, and mitigate the impacts of climate change on Lincoln County.
So as noted, the county joined the local climate partnership 4 years ago. And I believe at that time, we committed in principle to the idea of helping to support a climate study and action plan, but there's never been available resources to do that until now. So as far as you know, Commissioner Jacobson, is this essentially finally realizing that concept?
So this was one of mine that I put in, and yes, you are correct on that. You will notice it on the actual paper copy of the application, which was several months ago. It asked for 100K, but now it's updated to 50, and that's because I believe while there's not been any official ask or official commitment, I do believe that we would have some help from cities and the tribe and other organizations to fund that together as a plan for the whole county. So I don't think we need to carry that request as large as I had it in. So and working with him, we brought that down to 50K because I do think there's going to be some help potentially
That's very
from
good
some
for,
other
entities.
Like I said, nothing official yet, but just in conversation, it seems like there may be support there. And some of the cities have already been talking about doing this already. So yes.
I'm always happy to see that. We know, I think from experience on other projects, that when jurisdictions have a cash buy-in, even if it's only say 5,000, or in a case of a very small jurisdiction, 500, that means they've got skin in the game and a vested interest in the outcome as well.
Yeah, well, I think if you're going to develop a climate action plan, it would really be helpful to have the cities involved, because otherwise in the unincorporated areas, probably wouldn't work as well. So I think the city's involvement is a critical piece to this. Also, Commissioner Jacobson, you're still at Oregon State EDU?
Did I put my wrong email address in there? Oh my
I don't know if this is
God.
before the election or after the election?
Oh my God. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Hunt, on that.
Deja vu all over
Dan,
again.
All I can say is I must have been doing some heavy quadra-tasking in that one for that email address to come back. Thanks, Doug, for the catch.
No, I think it's a great use of the money, but again, I think the involvement of the cities is a critical part of it.
Consensus to move forward?
I feel like I'm going to abstain from being part of the consensus since I wrote it, and I'll let the two of you.
I agree to move it.
Okay. And although I believe you acting in support of this one technically doesn't violate the conflict of interest laws, because you wouldn't derive any direct or even indirect economic benefit, but still from the sake of appearances, I think that's valuable. Yeah, good thing. Next application is for electric vehicle and charging station analysis. And this is Mr. Johnson's work.
Thank you, commissioners. The domestic electric vehicle charging infrastructure market was valued at almost $3 billion in 2021 and is expected to expand at a compounded annual growth rate of nearly 31% from 2002 to the end of the decade. And green energy is expected to play a more significant role in both public and private electric vehicle applications as we move forward. And one of the key things that we look at, particularly in terms of our budget and before any state legislation or federal legislation impact us, we think it's important that we get a handle on exactly what the marketplace looks like. And within the context of that, there's not only understanding the market for the vehicles, but also for the charging equipment, which is significantly high in public and in consumer spaces. I've provided a list for you on this of the many companies that are associated with this. I want to share with you just a quick story. The first company you see in there is a company out of Simi Valley, California called Aerovironment. I was intimately involved with that company in the recruitment to the state of Washington. They are the folks that build the helicopter that is on the back end of the Mars lunar rover. And they do sell significant charging devices. And of course, as we all starting to find out, different manufacturers have different, for lack of better expression, plugs for their vehicles. And Aerovironment is trying to develop the universal plug that can be used by all folks. The other thing that's important is we started to understand in our preliminary research on this application is that they're low and high charger equipment. And one of the dilemmas that you have is recently there was articles in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times that said they went on a week-long trip with an electric vehicle and spent most of their time charging rather than seeing any kind of tourist-oriented activity. So maybe the West Coast, it being so large as it is and vast, will need some help. And so I think this provides an opportunity for us to do an analysis to look not only at Lincoln County through a tourist perspective, if they're driving an electric vehicle from someplace to here, but also for our own fleet and operations. Cost is $50,000.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt.
I was going to say, I heard a similar story about some elected officials that traveled from Portland to Coos Bay in an electric car. I think they said it took them 10 hours.
Because of the need to
charging.
charge. Yeah. The next breakthrough in battery storage technology, I think, will really leapfrog electric vehicles forward. But you know, the revolution is happening right now with automakers saying that, you know, I think Buick has said by 2030 their output will be nothing but electric. So.
Well, I have consensus to move forward if you do. I
Okay,
think this is
I
an
do.
important one.
Commissioner Hunt?
Yep.
Yep. All right, along we move to childcare.
So this, in 2019, an OSU study found that Lincoln County is unfortunately a childcare desert. And as such, since the pandemic, it probably has been exacerbated even further. In my previous community during the pandemic, we lost over 50% of our operators, and I hate to use this term, but slots for the children in each one of the childcare venues. We lost approximately 100 operators in close to 3,500 slots, which were significant. And I'd hate to think of what that is here, but I have heard you, commissioners, talk about the key issues for employment retention as well as employment attraction, and childcare plays a significant role in that activity. And as such, this proposal would be a partnership with the Oregon Coast Community College, the Small Business Development Center, Northwest Oregon Works, and we are identifying $20,000 out of the total $40,000. So 50% of the total cost of the study would come from your approval of LFRF dollars for this.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I think the project name change was
From my name.
appropriate.
You're just
Meaning-
finding all my,
It's a little
all
more
my typos.
A little more-
targeted to its purpose.
Oh, yeah, no, another great concept and indeed a great need. And we've got another project from Commissioner Jacobson. And
And
an
actually,
updated-
yeah, and we do have Paul online right now. If there's questions for him. So this is basically an updated economic development study post-COVID to look at, where we are, kind of a health and welfare check. So we have our normal economic development studies, which I think the last one was 2014. So
Right.
it's been a while. It was actually Paul's idea that time for another one, as well as looking at, where we are
Mhm.
after shuttered venues and et cetera.
Yeah, I believe the Oregon Coastal Zone Management Association did a coastwide study in 2004, and unfortunately, there wasn't interest from enough jurisdictions in repeating that, so the county did one on its own in 2014, and given, the changes that you have cited, plus the fact, we said at least minimum, it should be updated every 10 years. So we're at the 8-year mark anyway. So it certainly makes sense to me. And I know that the data generated by those reports has been helpful in a lot of grant applications of various types all across the board. So
I have a question for the director. For Paul? Paul, yeah. Paul, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Yeah, what do you see as your role in, affecting the execution of the study?
The lion's share of the work would be done by the research group who did the original 2014 study. And the principal there is Shannon Davis. They're out of Corvallis. But that study does require some boots on the ground work. Because basically what they're doing is they're looking at the latest published data they can get their hands on and then trying to see what's a little bit different. Does it pass like the sniff test and the gut test locally? And then they would do some door-to-door business and other reach outs. And our role would be a minor support role, which would be actually myself and Sarah Budding, our project associate, to assist the research group in gathering local data.
All right, and I guess in deference to you and the extremely complex and comprehensive plan that you outlined for the Alliance's efforts in the coming fiscal year, you feel you'll have time to devote to this project also?
Absolutely. This has been on our radar with fingers crossed for a while. So I've been banking as far as tracking as many hours as we can have to spend on that. So yeah, we'll be able to do this.
Okay, thank you.
consensus to move along? Any further comments or questions on this one? All right, we're into another segment here. Services to disproportionately impacted communities. And Administrator Johnson, can you just kind of give us a quick snapshot of what this category is about,
Thank
what
you.
the focus is?
So again, in my prefaced remarks at the beginning, I talked about the 11 different titles or chapters that comprise the ARPA. And within that, there are a variety of different elements that the federal government elevated so that different populations were not forgotten during this process. Specifically underserved in the context of ethnicity, also by age. Age is really important as it pertains to youth. So that's one of the key components that we have here in this series of programs that are in this category. And if I may, Chair, I will
Yes.
continue. So the first one is from parole and probation. I'll ask the director to come back up and take a chair adjacent to me. This program or project is called the Voyager Program. It aims to provide additional resources for underserved and marginalized populations within Lincoln County. This program aims to do this by providing structured skill building in the context of budgeting, cognitive behavioral skills, and employment efforts, substance and abuse treatment, mental health services, basic needs to overcome systemic barriers such as assistance navigating languages, justice-involved individuals develop self-worth and investment into their communities, and contributing members of our society. Again, it is a public health direction. It is an eligible government service. And with that, the director is here. He can answer any questions.
Well, I'll say I already have full buy-in on this. I know that this is something Director Camp has been working with his staff for quite some time, that he and I have had numerous meetings about the idea. And Tony, would it fair to be say that this is taking wraparound service for community justice clients really to the next level?
That is the expectation. We have, and by the way, these funds would be leveraged by our staff. We have 4 full-time staff that are assigned to our TIES program that are going to assist with this. They're going to be primarily running this Voyager program. As Tim just said, we're going to be providing, treatment, those kind of resources throughout the day. We're going to ensure that if they need assistance getting their medical benefits turned back on or any of that, we're going to make sure we assist them with that. Assist them with residential, with getting power back in our own name and those kinds of things. That's what our staff are going to be able to assist these individuals with, making sure that they're following through.
Great concept. So there's an accountability element built in as well. But
A big portion of our justice involved individuals, unfortunately, have mental health issues and are homeless and that, and so they just don't have those resources and or the know-how of how to get through those those obstacles that they got to face.
Great. Any comments or questions from my colleagues?
I guess a couple of questions. I'm sorry, on acronyms, TIDES.
TIDES stands for, gosh, I don't know. I can't remember right now off the top of my head, but it stands for, it's a sober living home. Basically, it's a sober living a residence. Sorry about that.
Formerly known as our TAPS houses.
Transitional.
Yeah.
Transitions. Okay, and then again, I'm going to trust that the staffing is for training purposes and not full-time.
There's no staffing that we have. Our staffing is being provided by P&P out of other funds.
Oh, project category, the staffing is. Last question, then you talk about subcontracting with a mental health provider. Is our Health and Human Services department going to be involved in that process?
We're hoping to meet here pretty soon concerning that. I also have, some funds set aside with some of our current treatment providers that we're, hoping to be able to contract out if we need to.
I would just hope that we're working collaboratively as much as
Absolutely.
possible. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or feedback? Do we have consensus to move on to the next item? Thank you, Director Tampa. Yep.
The next item comes from our county extension office. Its project name is Junto en Colaboración. And its support efforts is to build a relationship between the Lincoln County Community Services and the Latino, Latina, and Latinx, Hispanic, and Mesoamerican indigenous communities. Their efforts are to help build that relationship. Events will be aimed at bringing together the community impacted by COVID with our county's community services. And that means not only county, Lincoln County, our organization, but also nonprofits within that serve the community. The goal is to learn about the experiences of community members, to develop a comprehensive understanding of how they were impacted by the pandemic, while also learning more about how community members are managing with recovery and resiliency and their priorities throughout these interactions. That's a real significant effort. And I tip my hat to the county extension for taking this on.
And I think if we have more questions, at least I think Beatrice Boteo was on at some point. There she is.
She's there, and my apologies, we're missing a slide on this one, so you'll just have to kind of fill it in with your imagination. Beatrice, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
There we go.
Any questions or comments from commissioners?
Yeah, I guess I have a question. I think this is a really good program. And I guess my question is, there is talk about additional funding, but to quote the report, there has not been funding received, but an additional 4,000 will be sought for food costs, et cetera. My question is this going to delay this project? Because I think for $11,200 or another $4,000, this is a program that I think I'd like to see get started as soon as possible and not be delayed while we wait for an additional $4,000.
So do you want to take it, Tim? or-
No,
yeah, okay.
let's see if Beatrice, can you answer that?
Sure. Yes, I have been talking about it because that's one of the things, having these groups. I think it's very important, to have to offer some type of meal or for families participating or individuals participating. And it's very important to offer something. So during those meetings, and we are trying to find some support, through our funding to see, how we can support with that area.
So one thing I would note is Beatrice and myself and Wiley Thompson and Tim have gone back and forth on this proposal many times, because I agree with you, Commissioner Hunt. I think it was critical. It was critical in getting us through COVID. And I think the time to kind of expand that into looking at other services besides just COVID was really important. And so what the proposal says, which is 12,500, it's actually, if you look on this sheet, it's actually up to 50. So that there's a larger program there. And talking to Wiley Thompson, the regional director for extension, because there was concerns around we can't cover food costs with ARPA. He has some ways internally that he is going to cover that expense. So as the money goes to extension to implement the program by buying out some of Beatrice's time, then he can take that cost savings and buy the food. So he has a way forward to deal with that.
Okay, so lack of that $4,000 or I guess amounts above 11,200. isn't going to delay the implementation of this program?
No, so the new request is for 50K, and that would be the amount that we give to them to implement this program. And for the costs such as food that you can't use ARPA dollars for, they have a way to deal with that. In talking to Wiley.
All right, I'm sorry, maybe I misheard you. So the request is now for 50,000
It
Correct.
is 50,000
of ARPA.
of
The
ARPA
ARPA
money.
money. Yes.
Significant change.
Well, it is, and let me just share with you, that is because of the different iterations that we went through with the extension to build a program to reach this population. And so this is significant in the context of what they're proposing at this point, but it's taken us significant time to get there with it. We're still in the process of refining it. We'll get there with it. This is so important. So as a part of your direction and approval, when it comes back to you at the Board of Commissioners, if we don't have that money already identified for you, you can direct the administrator to find those dollars.
Well, I don't have a problem with the 50,000. As I said, I think this is an extraordinarily positive program. It's just that it's a significant change when you talk about going from 11,200 to 50,000. And we've had a matter of minutes to contemplate it. So I support it because I think the program is well worthwhile, well worth the money. And at this point, we've still got money available.
And Commissioner Hutt, there is an updated write-up that Beatrice provided that isn't in here that we can get to you as well.
Yeah.
Now,
Because
I
it wasn't-
apologize. I
okay.
haven't updated on mine. You do not have this
Because
updated.
it
No,
was
they
not,
do. It's at the end of the
oh,
packet.
it's at the end of the packet.
It'll go
Oh.
to the very end
Okay.
and it's labeled.
Because it was not just the dollar amount that was updated, it was the
It was the whole packet.
entirety of the program
It's
was.
in alphabetical order at the very back of your packet.
My apologies.
And it should say
Oh, there we
county
go.
extension.
I see it. Hutos and collaboration.
Doesn't look like that's in mine.
I'll give you mine, Claire.
No,
'cause I
it's
see
in
it.
there.
Here, I'll give you mine, Claire.
Special.
There you go. I just
Yeah.
need one so you can see
Yeah,
that. There you go.
part of the power and glory that goes with the chair position.
It's okay.
Well, again,
All right.
I support it. I just find that
Okay.
the process left a little be desired.
Infrastructure is our next major section, and Mr. Johnson, if you'll kind of set that up.
Thank you. So the federal government, within the context of infrastructure, provided a very broad swath of definition. Now, in the context of infrastructure, this can include technology, meaning the hardware, the software. It can include water, sewer, storm drain, culverts, roads, streets, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, lights, along with a whole host of other things. So we are on a variety of different projects here. One of the key things that the department directors and county staff identified were some areas of improvement to be able to communicate with our county residents and businesses. And so part of this associates with our ability to be able to develop necessary infrastructure. This first one deals significantly with an update of our website, which is certainly allowed under the context of the ARPA LFRF. And so this first proposal is identified community information and engagement, which deals with our ability to be able to communicate during If we are constituted into a lockdown again or some other issue might occur, the request for this for upgrading of our website is at $80,000. And this would be undertaken by county administration. Any questions?
It looks like a very good concept to me. It's kind of would it be fair to say, taking us really to the next level in terms of electronic integration of county services and specifically the interface with the public? That's
Agreed.
Yeah.
And that much more. It is significant at many different layers and levels.
questions or comments from my colleagues?
Nope, I think it's needed desperately.
Great opportunity.
Curtains replaced. So
That was a few years ago. Yeah, that was a definite upgrade. And virtual meetings is the next item. Continued support of public meetings to virtual settings.
Well, as you commissioners, as you know, this is a very important component of what we do and how we do it. And as we've talked about, the ability of the commission and county meetings to go off-site, make sure that everybody has the ability to participate in those. We need to make sure that we have the equipment necessary to pursue that activity, no matter where we're at in the county. And this is in part what that helps us do, so that no matter whatever location we're at, when in-person attendance may be needed to be limited, and this will enable our team to actively inform our community with digital meeting material and collection of public comment. And it is important because we have to cover a lot of ground. And there are places that we will go where we won't have that ability. So that this provides us that option.
I do have one question for Todd, since he's sitting here, in relation to not just this one, but there's that one, HHS computer license software replacement, hybrid meeting room equipment for HHS admin, finance, planning, assessor, treasurer, county IT infrastructure replacement, and some other stuff in here. I guess my question is, since we're not paying for staff out of ARPA funds, this is a ton of projects for your team to take over. So I guess I just want to make sure that, you know, through the use of contractors or what have you, do we have, like, you know, do you need some help to pull all this off? I guess that's my question. Or are those costs kind of in these requests?
Well, to be honest, we're not gonna be able to start any of them until August.
Okay.
At the earliest. We've got the migration going on for the email. We're not gonna be able to run them all concurrently. And so we're gonna have to have some sort of discussion about prioritization.
Okay.
I mean, we've got plenty of time to spend the money, that's the way I understand it. But everybody's gonna want their stuff done first. And we're just gonna need to have some consensus on where we start.
Okay. Are you, in these proposals, it sounds like some stuff, there's going to be some contractors to come in. Like I think for this room, the idea was that people would come in and kind of do some type of.
Yeah, we're
Audit,
looking at
okay.
contractors to, county administrator has great design ideas. And we'll just need a contractor to come in and make it happen.
Got it. Okay. So
So-
that will take the burden off of your staff a little bit in doing all this,
Yeah,
maybe.
hopefully.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That, I just wanted to check on that because there's just a ton of projects that impact IT. And I just kind of wanted to make sure that all of this was feasible, you know, for
Appreciate
your
it.
guys' end. Yeah.
Commissioner Hunt.
Well, if Commissioner Jacobson is through.
I'm done. Yeah. Thank you.
I guess I would follow a question. It's one thing to say we're gonna hire contractors. It's another thing to ask, are those people available out there?
It's another big question. You know, we oddly, the contractors that do stuff like this room are also very popular in schools. So we're probably gonna get stuck waiting till school is back in session, because they're all working on schools right now to upgrade their rooms. As school comes out, so we'll get in the queue. And I would bet that we wouldn't see them on site till August as well, maybe end of August.
Okay, but once the schools are back in session, you feel comfortable that there is those individuals that would be available to work under contract to complete these projects?
Yeah, well, there's only one project we really get a contractor for, and that's this room. Everything else we'll have to do in-house. We
You
might,
have the staffing to do that?
no, but we'll make it happen.
Thank you. Anything further on this project? Consensus to move forward?
Yep.
Okay. Broadband.
Thank you. Commissioners, the Cascades West Council of Government has received a grant from the Economic Development Administration, U.S. Department of Commerce, to do a tri-county study of broadband connectivity and vulnerabilities, especially focused on areas of unincorporated counties. The study would be able to guide additional investments from state and federal agencies to increase broadband connectivity in these areas. The three counties include Lincoln, Lynn, and Benton. And as such, this program is estimated total cost of the project is $100,000. The request here from us is $22,800. And this is certainly an eligible activity under ARPA.
Okay.
And when you look at your scoring evaluation, you'll see when it says regional context on that, this is a good case in point of that regional context at work.
Mhm.
So I'm sorry, on the blue sheet or blue line sheet. That's a plug for law enforcement, by the way. The request is 22,800.
800.
Leverage is 77% of the total. 100.
Yeah.
I don't understand the 77%.
Well, that's how much more you get, 77%. What's 77% of 100,000? $77,000.
Okay, so they took the 22,800 out of the 100,000.
Yeah, right, that's it. There you go. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
A banker would ask me a question like that. That's good. Yeah, that's good.
I didn't have my calculator, when I could do it, so I took the easy way. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And so that's, we'll probably see all of the major players come to the table on that, because they'll all want to be aware of what the three counties are looking at.
Further feedback or questions on the broadband study cost share? Consensus to move forward. Elk City Water Study.
Well, I'm going to defer to Commissioner Jacobson on this, but I just want to tell you a story. When I sat down and had conversations with many of you on different individualized projects, not on the whole list, but individual ones on this that I had asked about because of your expertise. Commissioner Jacobson had informed me about the Elk City Water analysis. And when I looked at it and understood the scheme of things, the importance nature of what ARPA is all about is to address issues of water and wastewater infrastructure. And this one just went right to the top. So I had recommended that ARPA from LFRF fulfill the total amount that was originally identified in this project. So if there's any sense of confusion, the grant funds requested were originally $10,000. And the recommendation made is that we apply the full $30,000 from LFRF on this. Now, this is for a study and an analysis to figure out what to do. I do not know this yet, but I can tell all of you this, that this area of our county is in what's called a new market tax credit area, which means that every community development financial institution that in later this month that gets identified as a recipient of those credits will be looking at Lincoln County as a potential opportunity for a project. Now, if we're not prepared on that, that's okay. They happen every year, and Congress has continued to appropriate new market tax credits through the end of the decade. So they will be there. But what I'm trying to illustrate to you and elevate is the fact that this is the beginning of probably multiple sources of funding to help support communities like Elk City.
And for the record, this is unincorporated.
Unincorporated, I'm happy to take questions about it.
It says that, sorry.
Yeah. I don't have any. Makes sense to me.
Great.
So I think we can move right along to Latitude laptop computer replacement for Health and Human Services.
Yeah, I'd like to, just to make sure that we have covered the hybrid meeting room equipment. Now that is, Kristen, I don't know if that one, I have,
I have,
There isn't a separate write-up for that. I assumed it was part of the,
it should be.
it could be,
Well, there's
it
an
could be,
application.
it could be,
Well,
there would be an
Would be
application
in
for
order
it.
after the last.
It
Elk
is,
City.
Yeah.
Hybrid meeting room equipment.
Here it is.
Here's Elk City.
Here.
Different.
it would be
Oh.
towards the.
There you go.
Thank you. Yep, I did not have that.
Special treatment, Sheriff.
Yeah.
So within the context of this, commissioners, there are multiple departments and offices that are not equipped to be able to have the hybrid meeting capacity. And so this enables us to be able to bring everybody up to the same speed, if you will, relative to that activity in case something should happen in the future. And that's what that does.
So these are the departments that do not have this.
That's
ability?
correct.
And the departments that do have the ability, do they have the current state-of-the-art equipment, which
Wow.
I assume this will be? Welcome back, Todd.
Yeah. Long time listener, first time caller. So yeah, most of our departments are pretty new within the last couple of years. For the most part, they're TVs, which last bit more than the usual 5 years that we get on monitors, and then machines, which are just on our regular replacement cycle. So it's the initial purchase that we really need help with, and then we'll just keep it up to date as part of our regular replacement cycle.
Okay.
So we should be good.
And the other departments are comfortable with that?
Yeah, so far, as far as I know, I haven't had any complaints with our current setups. The only one here that I know of that it's a little different would be planning. We might have to do a little bit of construction there to mount the TV on the wall correctly. But for the most part, I mean, these guys they just need equipment. We're gonna put in.
So when the department sees the equipment that they have, and they are not on that list, they're not gonna be Joe's.
No.
Well, I've asked for that. Well, that's a good point. I asked for everybody's input on that. We have the ability, the flexibility to be, if somebody else comes back and says, Mr. Administrator, we need some help.
Door for that.
Yeah, that's okay. Please do. I mean, we're prepared for it.
Well, and
By all means.
there is some other proposals we haven't got to yet, like upgrade IT equipment for a grand jury from the district attorney, that I'm just assuming is similar.
No, actually.
Oh,
it's
that's
a-
not similar. Okay.
Yeah, it's a different product.
Okay. Well, different product, but similar in that.
It's actually for iPads.
Okay.
Okay, as long as everybody's happy, that's all I was trying to make sure.
And we will try to make that the case as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Todd.
Onward to
Health and Human Services, Latitude laptop computer
Okay,
replacement.
that's it. Okay.
Jane.
She is.
Health and Human Services is asking they update their computer, and I think this is a key thing. I mean, it's an opportunity. The public health organization here, the county, is making a request through ARPA, and that is certainly a #1 eligible activity. And while we have the ability to be able to do this, they have significant numbers that they need to replace, and this would help them achieve that end result. So Jane is asking for 62,000. She's already figured out that she's got another 55,000. So the total amount is 117,000 that's engaged on this. And I'll turn to our department director for any questions you may have.
Seems pretty self-explanatory to me. And again, maintaining the ability to have a strong remote workforce and have as many people as feasible working remotely. Again, it just makes a lot of sense to me. Feedback, questions from my fellow commissioners? Questions for Director Romero?
No, I just think the more we can take advantage of the newest technology to improve our efficiencies and deliver better services in the long run, it benefits us all, and it should help control personnel costs. So, and I also now understand leverage is 47% of 117,000.
All right, on to our DMS software purchase, also for Health and Human Services.
You know, we're going to keep Jane up here for a couple items here. So you're going to have to ask Jane further about Power DMS. As an official senior citizen, I'm pulling a senior moment right now on what that software platform is. All right. Okay, well, I'll defer to you. You made that comment, not I. But this is important to their department, and within the context of this, again, a very important element for HHS as it relates to ARPA LFRF. With that, Jane's here to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, the Power DMS software actually came to our attention because I believe the sheriff's office uses it. In fact, all of the offices across the state use it. But for us, it would provide us with the capacity to consolidate our policies, consolidate our training records, even put trainings in the platform, even issue exams for employees and track the degree to which training has been completed, and also allow us to track our contracts. So right now we track everything in our J drive. It's very challenging to locate. Our training is kind of maintained manually, again, challenging to keep up with. And so this platform really provides a great solution for all three of those areas that we're responsible for.
Questions, feedback?
So I didn't really have any questions, but after you spoke, the sheriff's office uses this. I assume is it the same software? They compatible? They talk to each other? Whatever the help me, Director Richmond terminology is.
Yes.
Okay. What about other departments? Are there other departments that could benefit from this software?
We
Probably
did,
legal.
yeah, legal.
Probably legal.
We in fact did have Janet sit in on the presentation before we further evaluated this.
Are we considering funding for legal or?
We could.
So if I could, Power DMS is something we've been using at Sheriff's Office for
An ID
5,
yourself,
6
sure.
years. Oh, Curtis Landers. I didn't hear anybody else doing it, so I didn't know we're that formal today. Yeah, Curtis Landers, Lincoln County Sheriff. And anyhow, we've been using it for 5, 6 years. We first started using it for accreditation process because it's really better than the old file systems to store things. It's really a robust data management program. And then later, the 36 sheriffs actually came together and bought the entire system statewide. So we share, so training gets pushed out by the state training coordinator, and then we can just grab it down and do it. But I talked to the rep, not the last conference, maybe the conference before that over there. And it's something that came up as far as, I personally think the entire county could utilize this as far as, because one thing it does is like policy manuals. So you put it on there and you can actually make sure somebody has its electronic documentation for keeping policy manuals updated to where it goes through the signature line, when it's none of it's paper, it's all online, and it works very well. And we are actually transferring our jail policies over there. I like the fact that it does for contracts, because that's something we haven't used it for that I think would be beneficial for sure to have something like that countywide. So, and I know Director Romero talked with me about it, and it's worked very well for us. But one of the things I suggest is something countywide we should really look at. So that's just my 2 cents before getting on that.
So go ahead, Commissioner.
Well, I was
Hunt,
just
sorry.
going to say, I'm only one of 3 commissioners, but I think, based on what I've heard and what I understand of this program, I think there's a good reason to look at making it available countywide to all the departments. And I guess the only thing I would add is make it available to them and hope they use it.
Yeah, because it's something, when countywide, when something, a directive or whatever gets pushed down, it has to be immediately, you send it by email, but did they read the email? Did they not read the email? This way here, I mean, when somebody, they have to acknowledge that they actually received it in the system. So it's beneficial in that part. We pulled out things when we've had legal challenges that we've had to pull out. And did the employee know these sections? We're able to pull it right up. Yep, on this date they did this, and this date they did that. Can document that they actually had access to it.
So, yeah, I agree with you, Commissioner Hunt. It sounds like at a minimum that VOC/legal and HR would be immediate users. There might be some other departments as well.
Finance,
Christina's over there saying, yes,
Overseeing.
please, yeah.
I
Waves
guess
and
I would
allowance.
ask staff to come back whenever we act on this in the future. And I'd like to include all departments. I can't imagine that financially it would be a burden.
We can get an updated quote.
So was this quote, Jane,
Just
was
for
this
Jane.
just for HHS? Is it by the number of users or?
It is just for HHS. And
Okay.
in fact, it actually went up, I think, $2,000 when we added the contractual component. And I think that the subscription gives us more user ability than we are using. So I think that would be something to look at. I think we have like 300 user slots, of which we'll just need about 185, something like that. So we may even have capacity with the
Mr. Richmond?
Just real quick, there are some extra modules for that we're gonna wanna buy if we do use everybody.
Okay.
Right now, it's the departments are actually managing who has access to what. That can easily be done through Active Directory, our main identity service. So we'll wanna include that on anything that we purchase.
Okay.
So could we maybe have staff looking at Tim,
Yeah.
get an updated quote?
I'd like to see an updated application with
Proposal.
costs
Yeah.
for implementing the software countywide.
I would support that.
Yep.
Anything more on this? Consensus to move to the next
Making sure.
item.
Well, and I
Thanks.
would say, Jane, you'll absolutely get it. We're just trying to include others as well. So
Yeah.
not a no for you. Yeah.
Take advantage of the opportunity.
Well, I assume there are probably some cost efficiencies by doing the full meal deal at one time.
Instead of piecemealing it. Reefer alarms, no.
Yes.
Refrigeration alarms, right? That's what happens when you have to abbreviate. Okay, and
That's probably the vaccines, huh?
It is. So in this particular case, HHS is requesting monitoring and reporting alarms for 7 different refrigeration units that store COVID and other vaccines. The monitoring alarms cost approximately $3,000 per system or unit. electronically monitor and record temperature levels of the refrigeration units. Obviously, that's so very important in the context of the supply within those refrigerators, that if something should happen, we look at the expense beyond that. So the total cost on this particular request is $21,000. Jane's here to answer any of your questions.
I guess my question would be, I certainly support it because I believe that if there was a refrigeration unit that failed, depending on what vaccines are in it, the cost could be sizable.
It can be. We have had a few units fail recently and we've had to replace them, but these alarms will actually not only record the temperature and alert us if there's a problem, but it actually will create a database because we have to push information about the temperatures in each of our refrigeration units out to the state. So this even creates, kind of some efficiencies for us too.
Yeah, I will just add that very recently, my daughter, who's 16, she got notice that a series of vaccines, she said, not through county public health, but when she was like 6, 7 years old, they just found out that the temperature of those was not kept adequately.
Oh, no.
And so she had to redo her entire sequence of vaccines, which she was not happy about.
Yeah.
So alarms are a good thing. Uh-huh.
I would agree.
Anything further on this, or we'll move on to the next item, IT workstation replacements. Looking at this, it's kind of getting us caught up on hardware purchases, and Mr. Richmond is nodding.
I'll have the director come up here, but I think you've got some indication by what Commissioner Jacobson asked about earlier relative to this request and others.
So this is last year, we have a 4 to 5 year replacement cycle for our equipment based on the warranty available for it. We did not replace machines last year, A, to save money, and B, to refocus stuff on COVID. So this just catches us up, gives us enough to buy last year's machines, next year's machines, which is roughly the same amount is already budgeted in next year's budget. So this is a one-time cost. We will not be coming back to the bucket. And it just brings us to the top.
Totally makes sense to me. I mean, if we want to maximize the productivity of our employees, we need to give them the tools that they require.
And it's an excellent use of ARPA money from customer efficiency.
Just, I guess this is a philosophical question or the approach. We're getting 60 workstations, but 20 laptops, and yet we're moving more to remote work.
Well, we have a lot more remote work, yeah, but we still have an awful lot of places that aren't doing remote work. To put it in comparison, before we were buying the laptops, this year we would have bought 120 desktops.
Oh, okay.
So it is down considerably.
Very good. Thank you.
Anything else on this?
Nope.
We'll move on to the next item. Again, the dangers of abbreviating. It's on our score sheet as Parks Improv. So I was thinking that's
Roy's gonna come up here and do some improv. For us.
a troupe of improv actors doing presentations at all of our county parks.
So in fairness, you can start calling me Fat Fingers Johnson because I'm the one who typed this. So
No, that's
I don't think you hired me for my typing skills,
Nope.
but I am the progenitor of this typing of this list.
And this is actually improvements to the well and water system at Don Lindley County Park.
And also Brown Memorial Park.
Also our two largest parks, I believe.
And
Oh, no, actually Moonshine would be ahead of Lindley.
I'm going to have Roy come up and do this because he had asked for an amendment on this last Thursday, and we put this together, so much obliged.
I'm Roy Kenyon, Public Works Director for Lincoln County. Originally, our ask was 181,000 for the water system at Don Lindley Park. And then kind of that 23rd hour thing, some questions came to me and it's like, well, we really haven't done anything as far as improvements out there with Brown Memorial Park, which is on the Siletz next to Strom boat launch. And so I very quickly tried to put some numbers together and increase the ask by, what is it, 90,000, 80,000.
Increased it to 207.
Yes, okay. There's got to be a percentage in there someplace, right?
No, I'm just helping you worry about the math.
Anyway, the original ask for the 181,000 covered the installation of the entire water system for Lindley. Now, one of the difficulties of water system at Lindley is that the well actually is located on the opposite side of Highway 34 from the park. Because of the positioning of Lindley and as close as it was to the Alsea River and with wetland issues, and it's pretty well known that you drill next to a water environment like that, you're not really going to get good water. Well, where the water was found was along Canal Creek Road on the south side of Highway 34. So in order to get water from the south to the east, going to have to actually push a line underneath Highway 34, which then of course adds cost to the project. That project actually is still turning and burning. We're still trudging our way through the permit process. There are a lot of, I don't want to call them issues. There's a lot of variables involved in this park project. The Brown Memorial Park project is actually a little more straightforward. We do have a well already drilled, 10 gallons a minute, got good water. And it is on the same side of the road as the park. Currently the park is open, but it is dry and we supply a porta potty. So what this additional funding will do is actually try to get us at least a spigot. So basically a well pump, well house, the appropriate process for whatever it's going to take to clean water and then put basically a spigot out. Also, we did get, here's where it gets a little sticky is I know that there were test pits dug for a drain field for a restroom. But
This
last
is at Lindley, right?
This is at Brown.
Oh, at Brown.
Yes.
Okay.
Lindley Park actually is going to be a vault toilet because of the location to the river. It's not plausible, but there was actually test pits dug for a drain field. But as the last time I talked to Kelly Perry, who was our new park supervisor, she hadn't actually been able to trace down the exact results of those pits. So what I'm going to say is for now is primarily this is going to be for a water system at Brown with the hopes that sometime shortly after that, we'll be able to put in some kind of a septic system.
Further questions or feedback on this one from my fellow commissioners?
Water is probably pretty important.
Yeah, currently we do have an on-site park host, but the crew packs water. There's a holding tank there, and so they pack water weekly for that employee.
At Brown or at Lindley?
Hmm?
At Brown or at Lindley?
At both,
Okay.
actually. Yes.
Yeah. I think this is a really important project. One is water is important, but second, we typically just don't have any money in the general fund to kind of move our park systems forward. And this just is kind of one of those opportunities where I feel like we can finally make some progress on providing services there, like water.
Right, and we do get revenue from state parks through RV fees and whatnot, but those go to maintenance of the existing parks. And so anytime you have any kind of an infrastructure build out, we're forced to come up with revenue with some other means. And also, like with the boat ramp project, Oregon State Marine Board will kick in money for the boat ramp. But Brown Park does not have a boat ramp. That boat ramp actually exists next door at Strom Park. And so anyway, it's process.
And you're comfortable with some of the variables or unknowns that this is sufficient funding for completion of the project or projects?
I'm comfortable with the numbers for the water system at Lindley and the water system at Brown. As far as any additional septic system, I'm not totally comfortable there will be enough money to fully develop that. There was a 20% contingency figured into the number for Lindley. So if things go well, there will be carryover money from one project to the other project.
But you can develop a water system without developing a septic system.
I can.
Thanks, Rick. Consensus?
Don is smiling.
I hope so.
Yep, I have a
Thanks.
consensus.
Next up is county network switch replacement in the jail.
I'd like to call Sheriff Landers up here because we've got the next 6 items are all related to his department.
I've been called as a witness in a long time. Yes, so the network switch, I actually know more about power DMS than I know about network switches, and I see Director Richmond left, but what I understand is this is an IT project in the jail that will really replace a switch that operates several of our functions, the cameras, phones, a lot of things that the jail is required to operate, and the current switch is they aren't repairing it or making parts for it right now, so it really is our understanding and badly need to be replaced, and this is a good opportunity for doing so.
If they're not making it or fixing it anymore, that's usually a sign of obsolescence,
Yes.
isn't it? Questions or comments from my fellow commissioners? Okay, easy enough. We can move on to
Mark 43,
Mark 43.
record system.
What is this all about?
Mark 43 is a replacement of our records management system for patrol and support services. This is the system that we actually initially put it in as a decision package through the MTeam process last year and this year. It's really to replace our current system that is, how do I reframe, struggling to keep up. And it also will allow us to basically partner with 3 counties. The city of Salem actually runs the Mark 43. It's over a couple $1 million RMS system. This allows us to more efficiently get into a big system that we wouldn't otherwise be able to be able to do for us. Also, except for OSP, all the other cities in law enforcement in the county is going to this. Lincoln City's already on it. It's a relatively new system, less than 2 years old, and it will meet all of our needs for several years.
I'll have to admit, when I first saw Sheriff's Office request for Mark 43, I thought, remember at the end of Dragnet, to the guy, Mark 7 Productions. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I assume that when we go live under this new program, the annual fees that are going to be incurred through general fund dollars do not increase significantly.
Not
Maybe even
significantly.
go down? We hope they
It's
go
about the
down.
same as what we're paying right now for our annual cost.
Okay.
Which in reality is pretty darn good, given what inflation is doing.
Okay.
So again, another tool to better serve the public ultimately.
Just
Absolutely.
worried about-
One of the big things, and that especially utilizing ARPA funds, is it'll actually help us with something that we haven't been able to do but want to do for several years, in an online reporting system for our citizens. They can do it through an email process now, but and it's okay for them off our website, but it really doesn't save any work on the back end for the deputy. It just comes as an email, and they still have to do everything they need to do with the report. The new system will allow them to enter the information, and basically it goes through a few checks, and then it's automatically in the system and already there. So efficiencies for our deputies
It's
and
kind of a
support services also.
streamlined process.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Good.
All right, consensus to move on?
Yep.
Animal shelter, well, wait a minute, I don't,
Radios,
the patrol radios and,
jail radios.
yeah, they're not in my book.
A couple of equipment, patrol radios and jail radios. Patrol radios, both of them, both the jail and patrol over 10 years old. And they're just, sometimes they don't function as well as they used to, but mainly for the patrol too, is to get a digital system so that we can be more compatible with our neighboring jurisdictions. Mainly Benton County is one that when we got the radios we have, we were able to communicate with them because they're on an analog system. But now they're on a digital system, and it seems that we're often chasing them, people their way, and they're chasing people our way, and need that communication without relying on our dispatch centers providing that patch, especially when we're using portable radios. Search and rescue operations, all those things that go along with that. To have a system where we can switch to those other frequencies is it's essential nowadays.
Again, on your evaluation form, it illustrates a regional perspective, a regional focus, and that's what's so important about this application.
Thumbs up for me. Do we have consensus to move forward or?
Yep.
Yeah, I got a question though. Sure. I can understand replacing analog radios that are 15 years old, but the current jail radios were purchased in 2021. That's a year ago.
That must be a typo. 'Cause I know they're over
Okay.
10 years old, so.
Okay. Yeah, if he said 2011, I'd say, okay.
Yeah, both of them. The patrol's getting up to closer to 15 years old. I know the jail's over 10 years old, so
Yeah.
we don't need radios every year.
Okay.
My
Thank you for that
understanding.
clarification.
My understanding too is that you have to buy them all at the same time. You can't do like replacements where you have new models and old models kind of
Well,
mixed
the
together.
problem was when we initially bought them, we got them all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so through probably another grant funding and it's, yeah, it makes more sense if we do put it on some type of replacement schedule. It's just good intentions on those things, and because they usually start coming to the end. If one breaks or something like that, we definitely replace that as it goes. But it just seems when you buy them all at once, they
Expire all at once.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Consensus?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm doing both.
Okay, animal shelter, the new animal shelter, $1 million for that project.
I can address this. We identified money for the animal shelter. As we began our research on sites, that we developed a very large site facilities matrix to look at all the different components that comprise our examination, so that when we come to you for your direction, everything that we've examined. As we begin to look at sites and more than a dozen sites, one of the things that came clear to us was that at every site location, we needed to do infrastructure improvement. And the ARPA certainly calls out the ability to be able to have a government facility and its infrastructure as an eligible activity. And so looking at the dollars that we still had, county administration is recommending that we use the $1 million from ARPA for this infrastructure purpose. Now, let me share this with you. What's so important, again, is when we go back to these sites, if we use this $1 million, what this plays is not only just for the county animal shelter, but also leverages the opportunity if there is an area where we're looking at that has no infrastructure to it. We've driven the infrastructure to it. It then may act as a catalyst for other development in the area because we've driven that infrastructure. As such, create new businesses and new jobs, and maybe even retention of jobs. So it's an important feature as it relates to the use of ARPA. This is exactly what the federal government wants us to do with it.
Yeah, I think it's a nice opportunity because not just obviously with getting that infrastructure, sewer, water, et cetera, to or a new facility be required, but, you know, potentially leverages opportunities for that city or wherever it is, you know, to have those infrastructure further in that area or whatever for potential other businesses in the future. We're on animal shelter still.
Still on animal
Yep.
shelter, that's what I
I
thought.
think we're
yeah.
ready to see if we have a consensus.
So, excuse me. Because the initial borrowing we did for this project, you know, that simply with time and inflation and especially construction showing significant inflation, most costs associated with construction, if not all, that having the opportunity to access this additional funding brings us closer to being able to realize the kind of shelter that we want and that the county needs, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
With a lot of icing on the top for the elements identified with ARPA.
Well, because you have to use this for infrastructure, not for the actual building, is my
Correct.
understanding. So it doesn't mean that the actual building gets better.
Right.
It means that, you know, our ability to look at different sites that may not have infrastructure to them
Right. That-
opens up. But then
we can-
additionally, we wouldn't have to dip into our budget to build the actual building with to get the infrastructure there. So it's kind of just a different pot of money to
Sure.
get the infrastructure to a site.
Commissioner Hunt, you were going to say something?
Well, recognizing that we're now looking at multiple sites and they could have varying challenges as far as infrastructure, is this million expected to be enough? What happens if we need more? What happens if we don't need as much?
Couple answers to that. Let's take them one at a time. If we don't have enough, it's a good point. Although the sites that we're looking at appear to be within the range of us being able to address that with the amount of money that has been set aside. So I think just bear with us a little bit more because we're still doing due diligence on this. But I think that preliminary indication shows us that we're in pretty good shape. Now, what happens if we don't have enough? I have an answer for that, and I'm not trying to be humorous or lighthearted. One of the elements that you see below in the ARPA under grant administration is something that I'll explain to you later on that will allow us to access the fourth element of the federal component to addressing the pandemic and COVID, and that is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And that is where we'll be able to find more dollars to be able to pursue things that you just asked your public works director a question about septic and where, you know, or other elements associated with actions that he's working on. We'd like to get into those dollars. Again, that's $1 trillion allocation that Congress has, and it's rich target. So to answer your question, I think we're in pretty good shape. Yeah.
So that question has been asked and there's a plan
Yes, sir.
if needed. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Now we move on to another shelter-related item, software and technology for the new building.
So that is a new software. The current software that we have was built and designed off of the jail management system. And, you know, I often refer sometimes that managing adults in custody and animals at an animal shelter have a lot of similarities. And while the system did work, it's still working. I think that our new animal shelter director feels that having a new system will be better for moving into a new animal shelter eventually, and also for helping with citizens to have better access to the documentation. A lot of the information seems to be locked down for whatever reason because of how it was built with the jail, and so this will give a lot more flexibility for the animal shelter to do other things and to benefit the staff over there and also the community.
I do have a question about this. I think in a conversation with our shelter manager previously, she had mentioned that part of our barrier to like doing, say, offsite adoptions, like taking a load of kittens up to the farmer's market in Lincoln City or something like that, was just the ability to do remote adoptions from kind of an IT perspective, like having the ability to do that paperwork and the actual adoption when we're not at our building. Does this proposal address that?
I don't know that, but I can find out.
Can you circle back? Because I would say if it doesn't address that, it would be nice to see if maybe this request can be increased or another proposal, because I think the ability to do an offsite adoption is like, we need to be able to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I will check on that for you.
Mhm.
Anything else on this one?
We'll bring that question back when we come back with you for the Board of Commissioners meeting
Sure.
on
Thank you.
approval of this.
Looks like the next two items are also missing from my book. Commission Chambers Tech Upgrade would be the first.
Let me provide that to you. Let me provide both of those to you. Let me provide both of those to you.
Okay.
They could be in the back.
Wait a minute, I see some of these are in the back.
Oh, maybe there's the back. Okay.
Okay.
I see it. Okay.
So the first one is about you folks in this room. It's readily apparent that ARPA wanted to make sure that elected bodies had the necessary infrastructure technology, information technology, and audio-visual equipment to support the needs of hybrid meetings today and in the future. So some of the things that county administrative staff are looking at to help you are that in front of each one of you would be monitors, so that you would have your own individualized monitor, that you would have microphones with on-off switches on them, that you would have, this table would be removed and we would have a nice podium for the public in which to address you, that would have a computer and a monitor, keyboard, mouse, so that staff as well as community can make presentations to you. There would be two large monitors placed in here for the audience to review. This particular piece of equipment would be gone. Two high definition cameras would be mounted in the ceiling. One looking at you at the dais, the other one looking at the speaker.
Oh, so that means people would be better able to see our wrinkles and gray hair.
Well, that has something to do with it, yeah. But it also plays better on streaming.
That makes sense.
And within the context of that, that's what we're asking for here. Now, in addition to that, we also want to go back and look at our cable franchise agreement and identify how we can get ourselves back out on public access and use both public access and any other online platform that we can to help disperse the business of the commission. And we think that that's very important for you, and that is exactly the eligibility of ARPA LFRF. Now, to Commissioner Jacobson's question of our IT director, this is priced in at $100,000, and it is including the professional to come in and do this work under your tutelage, and then also to do all of the wiring necessary to make this happen. But this will reduce substantially this kind of setup that we have here. And can you hear me now as a part of the nomenclature that we typically use within our meetings?
You know, it all sounds very positive to me, but I guess one concern I have going from the table to a podium, well, what about a situation like this right now where you've got multiple reference books and papers spread out in front of you with a podium? What would people do?
The county staff would sit back here and we'd shift this table from up front.
Okay.
Put it in here. Us also probably being able to add more chairs in this venue, so that we get a better opportunity here for you.
I have to say, I'm not necessarily a podium fan either, but I think we can have the contractor come in and give us options. That's part of working with them, right? They can tell us what's possible.
Okay. Anything further on that? IT equipment grand jury.
So
Request from the-
in the context of this, one of the other things that was found during the process was when a grand jury meets, they're busy taking notes. And you have to take notes and people look like that. And one of the things that we didn't know earlier on in the process was, did you touch anything? You recall, we had to wash everything and do everything and so on and so forth. But also as a part of the digitization plan and working with the district attorney, this is simple. This is a simple fix. This is providing iPads to the grand jury so that everything is digitized rather than having to have them put it on paper, then having to get it scanned or somebody to type it all back in. This makes it so much easier for all parties involved. And this is a real great opportunity. And this is exactly what ARPA LFRF is all about. So this is again a request for upgrade IT for the grand jury and a total of $20,000.
Okay.
Critical
Any,
part of our judicial system.
Yeah. And I don't know anybody else that makes iPads. I mean, if they do, I'm sorry if I used the wrong terminology, but for the lack of better expression to you, it would be something along those lines.
okay. So we're good on that.
Yep.
Next item, election room tech upgrades from County Clerk Dana Jenkins.
Dana, if you want to come up here for a moment. Dana, I just witnessed what Dana had submitted this application well in advance of the recent election, but I had a chance to graciously invited me up to see the process and what he's strained elements that he has. And so the application maybe on the surface doesn't look like it fits the category, but in fact it does under the US Treasury guidelines. I'll cite those for you in a moment because we have another one that's similar in exact nature. But with that, I'll turn it over to Dana.
Yes, Dana Jenkins, County Clerk. We've experienced a huge increase in demand for observing all of our elections processes. This last election, we had observers in our office for 20 days ahead of the election.
Wow.
Through about a week afterwards. We allowed them to be in person watching. But as Tim mentioned, I asked him to come up and see what we were dealing with. We had 10 people in one room along with 2 observers trying to do our signature verification, our ballot processing and scanning all together in one room so that those observers could see everything we were
And
doing.
that's a very little room. For people that
Yes.
haven't been on it, this is like a quarter or less of the size of this room, very small.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do in the future is have purchase 4 high resolution cameras and have it be like a closed circuit situation where observers can watch a monitor and an observing area and be separate from our actual workers, but still be able to see everything that's going on. So that's what this request is for. I had Todd Richmond come up and look at our operation, and he recommended that he could do it for $20,000. And that would include everything, the cameras and the wiring and the installation, and a large monitor to be the location to be determined. We're not sure where it's going to be, but it would be in a different location than in our office.
Yeah, when I initially saw this, my first thought was, I know these very cramped quarters we're talking about here, and how do you make better accommodation for observers? And it is a public right under ORS that people can request to be observers, but with this remote access, essentially them seeing proceedings taking place on high resolution through high resolution cameras, does that meet the legal requirement as well? Or could they still say, I want to actually be in the room?
It does meet the legal requirement. There are some counties that do live streaming of their process. And so remote viewing is the only option. Some counties do have a separate room with a window that looks in on the actual workers, so they can see what they're doing, but they're not in the same room. And some counties have a hybrid of where they could do both situations. So
Okay.
this is what I think would be our best solution.
Yeah, we don't really have space to put in a window and have people, watching from different places. This makes sense to me as long as it meets those requirements.
Maybe someday when we have a new courthouse, that's something we could accommodate in the design, but until then, this sounds like an optimal solution. Any questions or feedback, Commissioner Hunt?
No, I'd just like to give a shout out to our county clerk. I think the short time I've been a commissioner compared to the tenure of Chair Hall, clerk has come forward with several requests for budget money to improve the elections process and equipment. And I think it has served our county well. And there's current media about some challenges in another county. And I think this would be a good time to recognize our clerk for the forward thinking and decisive action that has been taken when there is a need to assure the accuracy and security of the election in our county. So I easily can support this request, and thank you for your good work, Dana.
Yeah.
Yes,
Agreed.
concur.
Thank you.
So on to the next item.
Survey equipment.
Okay. Yes, that's going to be in the back of my book. Oh, good.
I'll have Eli come up and explain this, but this for the acquisition of land survey total station. This is a battery powered device, measures distance and angles to different positions. This is tantamount to the pending capital improvements such as the design for the animal shelter, county bridges, and other capital improvements incorporating either ARPA or IIJA. Eli?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Eli Adam, County Surveyor for the record. I think Tim pretty well summed it up there, but I'm available for questions.
I do want to qualify something under your, you call it police.
I said it's blue line.
Blue line.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. 36,000 is the correct. It leverages 30,000. My apologies. That should be 66,000. That does not change. That does not change the sum of the amount that we identified in our staff report.
So the ask is still 36.
The ask is still 36. That's
Got it.
correct.
Okay.
Okay.
36, not 36.5.
I guess either of those amounts could
With
work.
$500 one way or the other.
I'd probably go for the larger amount.
Yeah, all right. And the matching is more along the order of 24,000, not 30,000, and then the total is a little lower than 64,000. But yeah, so 36.5 as the ask.
And actually, I don't have a copy of the document.
Yeah, I'm not-
Okay.
Huh.
Look one more time. Oh, thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. I'll read it and I'll give it to you, Claire.
All right, are we good on this one? Ready
Well,
to- huh?
I'll ask, it says, project been funded from other sources, yes, county funds. Which county funds?
Yes, that's part of the corner preservation fund. The equipment is used for multiple purposes.
Not general funds.
No, not general fund.
Our county finance director in the back corner will breathe a little easier. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, I've got it.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
funny, Claire and I need to put that in.
All right.
Thanks. I don't have any questions.
All right, then we move on. Next on my chart is HHS lost revenue.
So it is, as identified, it is one of the 7 elements associated with ARPA, identified by the entity. They lost revenue during the period of $98,757.30. Can't miss a penny on that one. Any questions?
And I assume is that due to reduced client contacts or?
Yeah, Commissioner, during the pandemic, we closed or drastically had to cut back on our traditional flu and vaccine clinics.
Because you were contact tracing and doing.
Yeah,
COVID.
all the other stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so the ARPA funds do permit government to recover revenues lost during the pandemic.
Works for me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Grant administration audit.
So within the context of the 7 items is grant administration. And within that, there's a couple things that we should be aware of. First and foremost, this takes a lot of time. We still have over 2.5 years of ARPA. It is recommended that we bring somebody on 50% to help with its management. It is allowed. So what we have done here is take just about 4% of the total amount that's been allocated, which is $360,000, and use it for 3 functions. First function is for a part-time grant administrator at 50% of the time, followed by money set aside for an auditor. We've set aside $100,000 in this particular case. So that will be spent at the very end. What I worried about was, look, you come right up to this and all of a sudden you spend all the money and then you get hit with having to hire an auditor and you don't have any money out of your grant to hire the auditor. So it's important, I think it's an imperative that we make sure that we know that we can do that and it is an allowable activity. And then something very important, and again, I did this in my last community, and others across the state of Washington did exactly the same thing, but we hired outside federal grant consultants, professionals. One of the groups that we hired was from Hillsborough, because they have a 98% success rate with federal grants, all sorts of federal grants. Every category you can think of, these people would be able to offer. And I think this would help be enormously beneficial for Lincoln County. We need as much help and assistance as we can, reduce a lot of stress on staff for a while. And this again would be on contract on a per grant basis. You'll be surprised how much they can write for how little money that they charge. So I was excited about that. Let me just share this story with you. When I was in Federal Way, I told the mayor and city council my hopes and dreams were that we would equal the amount of new grants compared to the $22.5 million that we received. So we doubled down. I don't mean to sound like a Las Vegas gambler here, but at the end of the day, we'd have, at the end of the ARPA, we would have raised a total of the 22.5 that we got from the federal government. We raised equal that amount for $45 million. Your department directors have already done a phenomenal job because they've already exceeded twice the amount on the leverage rate of what they're asking for here today at 5 million. They're on a 10 million. It wouldn't surprise me that they wouldn't double down on the total amount of grants that are available. And actually, I think they could triple that by utilizing the investment Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act. Now, having said that, this is important, commissioners, and that is this. Those stable of grant writers that you may know and you hire on contract to write a grant or more, they're not just aimed at ARPA. They can be aimed at the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act too as well. And that takes a real skill set to be able to go after that. And those are the kind of people that we're looking for to help support our efforts in this activity. So I hope that you'll take that into consideration. I think it's an important element moving forward for us.
Commissioner Hunt.
Well, I guess I'm comfortable spending the money, but I have an organizational question. I mean, we've struggled at times with grant writing. Commissioner Jacobson has spent, I would say, a tremendous amount of time grant writing. I've had conversations with our finance director. There's been difficulties in accounting for grants. So organizationally, where are these grant coordinator, auditor, and grant writers going to fit in?
So under the authority of the county administration, that individual would be assigned here in county administration on grant and will adjust accordingly over the next 2.5 years.
Okay, so they'd be a part of your.
That's correct. And so they would be watching as it answers to your second question about monies being monitored. That's what this, in part, what this individual will be doing is monitoring those grants, making sure that county staff is achieving what they're supposed to be within the context of the guidelines that have been presented by the federal government. And there are many, and we have to submit every 90 days and an annual report, which takes time. It's not something that a county administrator can extract him or herself from and just do completely by themselves. It takes a team effort to be able to do that. And we need a point person to do this work.
Is that going to help address the challenges though that our finance director has? As far as
By
accounting?
far, absolutely. You bet. Yeah, I know. It's quick to be understood. And that was the reason why I recommended this, because this is somebody who can ride herd on the county staff that's gotten the ARPA and any other grants that they have out of the 4 components that the federal government put out in terms of COVID.
No, I think it's needed. I just want to make sure how it's going to fit in.
Yeah, because the writing is the easy part.
Yes,
Well,
it is.
That has been my
Yeah.
experience, you know.
You probably have other things you could do too, Commissioner Jacobson.
Well, yeah, I will say that, and I talked to Tim about this, and then looking at IIJA, you know, like I'm pretty good. I have gotten a lot of money, but those are very hard writes. They're not easy writes. So I feel like it'd be nice to get some help with that and people that are more versed in writing those kinds of stuff. So
Well, it's one thing too to write the grant, but how do you manage the
execute, yeah. Like I said, the writing is the easy part. Yeah.
I have heard concerns, or not concerns, I guess, the frustration that the finance directors had at times when grant monies are being expended. Nobody seems to have control or focus on which grant under, what parameters.
So this is the way that it works in reality, because I have done this.
I like reality.
So I've done this already. You find that right person, it reduces this angst and it becomes a major team player within the context of the Board of Commissioners or Mayor, City Council environment, the finance director, and all the departments of a city or county. And it really reduces the stress significantly because this person can spend the necessary time to watch all of this. This is a lot of money and there's a whole lot more to come, I believe. Okay, I'm going to take the glass half full. I believe that there's a whole lot more.
Oh, I do too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
absolutely.
based on your track record at your former employer, that's a reasonable expectation.
Okay,
I'm just trying to make sure we're reducing stress where possible.
Yeah, that's right.
next we've got a $50,000 request from the district attorney for high wall cubicles to help mitigate the impact of COVID in the workplace.
Well, I guess I have a question about all of these. These are under the pending further analysis. Do we want to talk about these today?
Yeah, I would
Okay,
like
okay.
to, if we could. And part of the reason is I got some answers for you. So what I'd like to start with is the planning department, and they made a request for $50,000. Now, this is called the enhanced digitization process. And this is now, as they start to go online, and everything continues to come online, they're not set up with monitors to be able to read the blueprints. More importantly, they need to get a scanner to be able to take on the blueprints so they can scan those in and then they can see them on the monitors. So we get out of having these hard copies anymore. And in fact, we get our customers to start sending us digitized records of what they're proposing, and it can be done easier that way. But everybody's working off of the small 12 by 18 monitors right now. So our inspectors need to be able to have that. And so that's an important element. Also within the context of that, similar to the grand jury, we're also looking at handheld devices that can be used by our inspection staff when they're in the field. The equipment is old, it's antiquated, it needs to be updated substantially. So we have a couple major asks associated with that. Are there any questions I can answer on that?
Nope. No, sounds like good use of technology, which is, and I think a focus of many of these requests.
The other one is on high wall cubicles, and that's from the district attorney's office. Now, I contacted and I told Laney, our district attorney, Laney Danforth, that I would do this. I reached out to the US Treasury. I received this email today. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for your inquiry regarding the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. Treasury's latest guidance on your question can be found in frequently asked questions 2.3 in the final rules. Now, look, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to tell everybody in this room, and I'll tell anybody anyplace else, I'm anal. I've read the 660-page ARPA. I have read the final guidelines. I have also read the 1,223-page Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act inside and out. Let me just give you quickly, this is an eligible use of the funds in this category, and as such, identifies that we can make improvements. Capital investment in public facilities to meet pandemic operational needs, such as physical plant improvements to public buildings, as well as furniture and equipment and furniture, fixture, and equipment to implement COVID-19 mitigation tactics. These are enumerated uses are consistent with the guidance from public health authorities, including the CDC. So on page 55 and 56 of the final guideline, that request is solidified.
Okay.
So if there was any question about that, let's put that to rest. It is identified by Treasury in their email to me. So can I take any questions or?
Well,
And on that,
if we do this for the DA's office, what about taking a look at bringing it to other offices where there's a cubicle environment?
you certainly could, but there was nobody else that had asked.
They might
And
not
so
have thought of
nobody
it or
else
might
had
not
made,
know.
nobody else had made that request. There certainly is an opportunity for you to do that. Whether the clerk, whether the assessors.
Treasurer's office
yeah.
comes to mind too.
So again,
Yeah, actually, yeah.
so having said that, I just want you to know that it passed the litmus test.
Okay.
Nobody else had asked. I appreciate, I extended my thanks to the district attorney for bringing it forward, and I did exactly what I said I was gonna do. Tracked it down.
Can you maybe follow up with the M team and just see if anyone
Absolutely.
else has a need for high wall cubicles? You know,
Sure.
Perhaps no one just thought of it,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely.
This goes hand in hand with the software we talked about.
Yeah.
Seems to be of value to the, potentially to all county departments. This would certainly seem to be a way to mitigate health
Yeah.
risks throughout the county. So
Yep.
I think we ought to look at more than just the DA's office, but again, she's the one that.
She made the request.
Yeah.
Bring it forward.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good for her for getting the ball rolling.
Yep.
Okay.
And more importantly, for US Treasury responding in a timely
Yes.
manner,
Yeah,
because
yes.
To clarify that
I
it is
still, I will tell you
allowable.
this. It was some time ago when Commissioner Jacobson asked me to meet with her and Sheriff Landers, and we went through the discussion
That's right.
point on
Yep.
items. One of them was for tasers. And I've never gotten an answer back from Treasury on the tasers. So I think they're probably looking at me going, I don't think that has anything to do with COVID, unless you can zap COVID out of you with a taser.
I
I'm
think,
not sure
I
that
think
that
no
works.
response is a no.
I think that
kind of
that's
how I-
correct.
Yeah. perceive it.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next one, Chair and Commissioners, is the Opengov software.
Yes.
Now, this is important, and our finance director is working on this, but it was supposed to go in front of a demo in front of the M team at our management team at our last meeting. And one of the things that the management team asked me when I came on, and all of them independently asked me, not as a group, but it tells me something immediately, is they want to be intimately involved in the acquisition of any county-wide software. And it would be disrespectful of me to say, let's get this without their input first. And so what I would like to ask is for your approval of this, and should they say, for whatever reason, no, for whatever, however, they should say no, I will alert you to that fact. Although I will tell you this, that my former finance director will be here tomorrow and also on Wednesday. We implemented this software, Opengov software, in Federal Way shortly after the COVID struck, and we needed to, we had the lockdown and we all needed to work remotely. It was a dramatic improvement over our previous work, and it enhanced the ability of three things. One, for the elected officials to interface on budget issues, much easier. So you could go on board and develop your own questions and see what things would look like without changing the document. You could create your own element and work on it, and then use that to ask further questions. Second, it really helped with community output and elements associated with dashboards and looking at things again without changing the base information, impacting it. It allowed you to be able to extract the data and build your own and be able to ask questions in a manner that they could come before the elected officials or a budget committee and say, look, I did this. This is what I see going on. Tell us, why don't you see the same thing? This software, I will just tell you, cuts both ways, because you got to get out in front of it, and you got to be really smart on this stuff. But I'm also going to tell you this, and my finance director, when he gets here, will tell you the same thing. You don't start this in 30 to 60 days. This takes a ramp up time to get it there. And you've got to explain to the elected officials in the community, give us a little time to get there because we got to work it. But once you do get there, it is the difference between night and day. So his name is Ade Arawula. I know that's strange. He's a Nigerian finance director. Some people say, did all of our money in federal way go to find its way into Nigeria? But yeah, that's right. Yeah. But lovely man, retired, and spending time right now going up and down the West Coast as a retired advisor to finance shops, helping people understand how to work a variety of different softwares at no cost to people. It's a good way for him and his wife to tour. I said, gee, do you think you could have picked a better time without gas being at $6, $7 a gallon to do that? But nonetheless, I would like you to adopt that. And if the M team comes back and says, thank you, but no thanks, then I'll alert you to that fact. If they say good to go, then we'll come back and, but you're still going to get a demonstration program, which I'm hoping is the next management team meeting.
Okay.
All right.
So I guess a point of clarification, you said your finance manager, I think it's your
Director.
former finance.
Former, yes.
Federal
Yeah,
way.
a little worried, you know. you
Yeah.
want in
Yeah.
there. And then with our finance director in the back of the room, I would really like to hear, I guess, maybe color analysis of what you think this program would do to make your life easier. Or set the stage for what we'll see, I guess, it'd be a week from this Thursday.
Yes, a week from this Thursday. Christina Scheer, Finance Director for the record. Our initial reviews of this software indicate, benefits on just a number of levels. Certainly, from my perspective, there's a number of efficiency things. The budget document itself is exceedingly difficult and time consuming to pull together. It takes about 120 hours to pull that PDF together. And that's basically me. There's no one else in my office that does this up until today, actually. My budget analyst started today. And that has to be done every time we do a version of the budget. That's, basically pulling together a series of spreadsheets and PDFs and Word documents into a document. That's just one element. From a construction element, it standardizes the input process and allows us to have methodologies that allow department heads to work at the very beginning of the budget all the way through the budget. Whereas now we give them certain touch points because some things are in encode, some things are not in encode. We load the data into encode or it's hand keyed. So there's efficiencies that way. Decision packages can be loaded directly in, and it's literally a push of a button. BOC or the budget committee says yes, and that gets moved on to the next step. So there's a lot of efficiency and process improvements that a software like this can do. I'll tell you, all of the high-end software, there's probably 3 major ones that we looked at. There's more out there, definitely. All of them do this kind of work. And they all have those same kinds of benefits. They help with the start to finish construction and transparency. So instead of being able to look at the budget once or twice, you can look at it every day. Because this software would integrate with the general ledger, it becomes a reporting substitute for encode. As you probably are aware, encode's not the easiest software to get information out of. Most general ledgers are like that. They're designed for accountants and financial statement reporting. They're not really designed for budgets, and reporting tends to be a weakness. Software like this excels in the reporting area. It has built-in dashboards. Department heads, not just M team, but operating department heads could have a dashboard that pops up on their screen every morning that says, here's my budget, here's how much I've spent, here's how much I've got left. They can play with those numbers. If I increase this by 20%, reduce this by 20%, what would it look like? They can do that all online. You cannot do that in Encode now. You have to call up finance and get me or Deanna on the phone to say, hey, this is what I want to do. Can you figure it out for me? And if we've got time, we do that for you. So that's really the power of software like this is not just on the public level, but internally with our departments and operating managers, it drives the information to their level.
I think this actually goes back to your comment, Commissioner Hunt, about kind of grants management, because Encode has been incredibly frustrating for me and my grants manager in doing wildfire recovery grants is we have to track it in a different system and then call finance to actually put it in income. So I know it's frustrating for you as well. And so I think having a system that can do that kind of in one piece would be incredibly helpful in managing some of that. So
I'm 100% supportive. I think it's so critically needed that I wanted to make sure that both the administrator and the finance director had a chance to talk about the virtues of the program.
Great. Thank you both. Now, I believe this takes us through the entire list of items, or if I missed anything.
Oh, this concludes this. Again, you still have several millions of dollars available for you.
So we'll probably look at allocating at least some of that for community projects.
Yes.
I think that's a decision we would need to make and discuss.
Yes, absolutely.
But
In
we've
future
got the option
discussions.
to do that, further internal projects. such as
Correct.
Just one.
Well, Tim brought up, monkeypox could be coming. So
Yeah.
hard to say.
Monkeypox.
Monkeypox. We were being facetious, but
Yeah.
we're trying to
Don't
trying to
know.
be aware of the fact that this is not the only thing that we need to be aware of. We do have several years left within this grant that we may not see something on our radar right now, but it might be something that 6 months from now or more might be. So we need to be aware of that.
Okay.
Commissioner Hall.
Yes.
Just so we're all on the same page, I believe there are 3 items that we discussed today that staff is going to come back with additional information. Could we just verify those 3?
So I had 2. I had the citywide software.
Citywide, countywide software.
I'm sorry, countywide software. My apologies.
No, that's okay. I just was thinking
Yeah.
of cities.
Countywide software.
That was the
That-
sheriff. and
Yeah,
DMS.
HHS, yeah, that one. The second one was related to the equipment, the high wall cubicles.
But you got verification.
Yes,
this
that I got
isn't-
verification. Now I just need to go out and ask the members of the M team.
Are you
Are
interested?
interested.
Yeah,
And
But then Opengov, we just discussed that.
so that's.
That's the third one, but again,
Okay.
that's gonna take another week or two to be able to get back
And
to
then
you.
there was another follow-up I had specifically for Sheriff Landers on off-site adoptions.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Oh, you have the answer. Okay,
There we go.
great. Let's just clear it up now.
Check on.
Take care of one of them
Yeah.
right now.
Awesome.
I emailed the animal shelter manager, and absolutely you can be able to do that with the new software as far as remote
Okay.
adoptions.
Excellent.
Great, because that
Also,
allows
once
us
we
to.
get rid of our current licensing program that is not doing very well for us, it will also help transition into that for a better system.
Yeah,
for our
I
folks.
personally licensed my dog through that program and it was very difficult
horrible.
as a user
It's horrible.
to do that.
Yeah,
Mention it to my wife.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is, don't mention it to the team over at the shelter
Yeah.
either, because they hate it. It's been an
It's very
absolute.
challenging, yeah.
We're
Okay.
working with legal to get rid of that.
So great. So that technology will allow offsite adoptions and
And
that's
the-
excellent.
Yes.
Good.
Yay, thank you.
So,
When's this gonna come back to the board?
yeah, I
The
thought
week
we
after
said at
next.
the beginning that it'll
Week
be the
after
week
next.
after next.
But that'll be after M-Team, or will it?
Well, I'm asking you to approve the $50,000 for Opengov.
Subject.
Subject
Subject
to.
to
I
MT.
hope that's all right. And may
Yeah.
I share something with you?
Sure.
And Christina, if you can turn back up just for a moment. Christina had a creative idea on this, so the 50,000 is to ramp up. If it is a decided decision to move forward with Opengov, then this 50,000 gets us to that, but she's going to make a change adjustment internally.
Well, basically, I'm going to repurpose a fee that is already being charged to departments for payroll software. I'm just repurposing that fee for budget software. The allocation base is just reasonable. It's basically FTE based, which is about as close as we can get on something like this. So yes, the 50,000 ask is for implementation costs. The ongoing cost is already covered by fees and charges that are already in our budgets.
And are no longer needed for payroll because of the new payroll system?
Yes, by discontinuing Kronos, we recognize cost savings. We would just turn those cost savings into funding for this enhanced budget software.
Very good. So yeah, I want to thank her for that. That's being very effective and efficient.
I would also like to take this opportunity really quick to point out that all of this will require budget adjustments. And so we will need to go through and bring you budget adjustments to get all of this happening. So there's some mechanics in the backside that will have to happen for this stuff.
Okay.
But that's always the fun side of budget adjustments, budgeting additional revenue as opposed to having to.
Yeah,
right.
it's
We can get it in the bank, but to do anything with it, we have to appropriate.
right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thanks. So,
Before we move to adjournment, I want to make a call for public comment. Is there anybody who wanted to offer up to 3 minutes of public comment on what the projects we've discussed today?
oh, yeah, raise your virtual hand.
Right.
We just have staff online
Okay.
right now.
Okay.
And public comment can also come in via our smart sheet or at our next BOC meeting,
Sure.
because it will be two
Yeah.
meetings until
There
we
will
adopt.
be
Yeah.
further opportunities for the public to comment on these projects. All right. Anything else? Are we ready for adjournment?
Thank you, commissioners, very much.
Thanks. This workshop is adjourned.